Please only speak at my invitation. Please say your name before speaking. Please remember to turn off your microphones and cameras when you're not speaking. And please remember, if you're physically in the room, to speak clearly into your microphones. Thank you. Right, on to the agenda. Apologies for absence. We have been received from Paul Hooper and from possibly David Strip, who may be joining us online, and we'll see that in a moment or two. Moving on to the, I have no other apologies. I understand. Moving on to the minutes from the previous meeting. We've all seen the minutes. So can I understand that you are happy to approve those meetings of the meeting held on the 17th of July? Could we have a show of hands? Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Are there any other declarations of interest in respect of any matters included on the agenda for consideration at this meeting? No declarations. Public question time. There are no questions. Thank you. Moving on to item 5, the action plan and progress. There's a verbal report by the chair. Basically, the action plan from the previous meeting is behind me on the flip chart. Just for your record, you all had a copy of it after the meeting, and it's incorporated into either the agenda for this meeting or in the minutes. There's only one thing. Hopefully you're all happy with that it's all been brought forward for our discussion today. Only one thing I'd like to add into that I was asked to write to the leader about the situation with declarations over Glastonbury, and I received a letter and confirmation of the future action, which you all had on the 13th of August. So if we could just minute that, please. Thank you very much. Right, moving on to review of complaints by priority group 1. Priority group 1 met, and there were 2 elements. The document is in the papers. There are 2 recommendations. The key findings really were about 2 areas. One was about timelines. The group has requested the monitoring officer to provide an analysis of timelines currently set within the complaint process. Secondly, they seek confirmation of whether all parties involved in the complaint are notified when timelines are amended. That was the first element. The second, and I'll go through that and then come back to the first one. Communication with witnesses. The group wished to understand the procedure for contacting witnesses during the complaints process, and specifically they have asked whether witnesses are contacted directly by the monitoring officer. Secondly, whether all witnesses are informed of the outcome of the complaint. So that was the findings of priority group 1. I'll open for any questions and any clarifications or discussion about the recommendations and the suggestions about the key findings. Do I have any questions or comments? Francis.
Merely that I think just to make the point, not only we asked, but we had I think a view that the person asking for witness statements should not be either the complainant or the defendant, but should be the investigating team, rather than asking that we're asking for clarification that we did actually have a concern if it was not like that. We would be interested in the answer.
Francis, that's a useful clarification, and I think it was part of our discussion. So we have then 2 questions that the monitoring officer provide an analysis of the timelines. Would that be possible for or before the next meeting?
Chair, through you, so really happy to provide a timeline of how generally the complaints will follow and any kind of variations to them. There are some that are relatively, I use the word straightforward, no complaint is straightforward, but relatively formulaic and straightforward. There are some that are more complicated because of the nature, a number of witnesses that are engaged, and in some instances, the complexity of the case, because we are finding cases are multifaceted and not necessarily one particular issue. So we can certainly provide that. I would just advise that variables is an ideal timeline that we would work to, and I can set that out. And then as part of the next step, we can also sort of set out what the variations to that would be.
Thank you, Alan. I think that was partly what the second element was, really, was that if there were delays, that all parties are notified when timelines are amended, and that that's noted, so that people are not thinking they're expecting the initial, and that we can just have a confirmation that's the case as well. The second element, which is the area that Francis has just raised, really was that the witnesses are contacted directly by the monitoring officer. Now, those witnesses will be provided by either of the parties, I guess. And secondly, was whether all witnesses are informed of the outcome of the complaint. And are you able to answer that now, or would you like to come back to us on that one?
So I can certainly answer the point around the contacting of witnesses. So witnesses come to us in three ways. One, they identify themselves to us because they're aware of the situation and they notify us of either the need to get involved or want to get involved in a complaint process because they are aware of the situation. They are suggested by the individual that is the subject of the complaint or the complainant, and that tends to be the three routes that we get through. Generally speaking, there are very few exceptions to that. We do tend to approach if there are situations where we believe there is further evidence that could be provided by another party. The monitoring officer and my deputies have the opportunity to go and reach out to them directly if we wish to do so, and we have done so in some instances whereby we feel that's relevant. So three main routes, and of course the fourth one being the way through. In terms of the question around contacting witnesses, we haven't done that in the past. Obviously, we published the outcome of the investigation, and we could take the step to notify people of where that outcome has been published if we wish to do so, but that is problematic. We don't tend to notify the witnesses of the outcome of the investigation. We also don't notify the complainant or the individual that's the focus of the complaint of who those people are, because clearly we don't want to identify those through that process. And even if a witness has been provided by, say, the complainant or the party that's the subject of the complaint, they may or may not disagree with the complainant or the party that's the subject of the complaint, and that has happened. So we have had instances whereby witnesses have been brought forward to us with the individual thinking they are going to either support their case or not, as the case may be, and we get the opposite back. So it is a slightly murky area if we started to publish that information. But Scott, anything you want to add to that?
No, I mean, you've covered all the key points. I suppose, again, just recognising some of the legal obligations, particularly in terms of the Data Protection Act. And I think also, hopefully you'll all appreciate this in terms of an ethical framework, also confidence in the process. There's confidence in terms of everyone who participates, in terms of how we treat the confidentiality of their submissions. That provides confidence in some people stepping forward. I think where some individuals were aware that their details or other parts of the information would be more widely available, that may impinge on their engagement in the process. And again, I suppose that the other parallel I'd probably draw as well is many of the processes we follow mirror similar forms of arrangements that we have for hearings, whether those are employment tribunals, whether those are disciplinary matters. So there are some common principles in terms of how witnesses are treated throughout all of those.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm feeling a bit puzzled. There are two elements to my puzzle. I was involved as a witness in a complaint in another council. I know, in fact, that the person who was complained about rang me up and said, if I was contacted by their monitor officer service, would I provide would I feel able to produce a witness statement? That was the end of the involvement of that member who was complained about. I was then contacted by the monitoring officer function of that council to ask me to provide a witness statement. That was what we were asking, is that the process that is followed? And that's clarification. Not, of course, it's going to be the person complained about or the person complaining who is going to likely to produce people. But it was not that the suggestion in the discussion came up that what might be happening was that the person complained about went to their friends and said, can you write me a statement, and I will, and it will then go in. That feels not a proper way of doing things. So that's the bit of clarity about that we wanted. Secondly, the clarity about knowing that there, or at least knowing that there is an outcome and where to find it, was what was asked. Not about the publishing of witnesses' details to anybody or at all. No question of things becoming public and worrying about the trust and people wouldn't be prepared to provide information because they would feel that they couldn't trust that it would be kept confidential. Merely that they'd know the answer, because what came up in discussion was that people who had provided witness statements were later on saying, oh, so was there a result? Wasn't there a result? And that left the water completely muddy for everybody as to whether there was an ongoing complaint about somebody or not. So that's what we were really after.
Thank you, Francis. I'll make my own comment if I may. And I agree totally with what you said, I think. And I'll add to it that I think there is a danger if there's too much contact between any of the parties at the point that this complaint's going on. That's a danger. And secondly, that we're missing closing the loop by not going back to people. And I've had personally had two people comment on that. And so I think without any names of Pactrill, we can quite certainly show that something has been done and what the result of that is.
So thank you, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to, I think the clarification from Councillor Nicholson was really helpful. So we'll take that one away. Forgive me, I was at slightly cross purposes. So we can take that one away and make sure that there's a way in which we can address that in a way which doesn't raise any particular concerns.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any other comments? Thank you very much. So moving on to, is everybody happy with the actions that are coming out of that? I will pick those up on the board later on when I have a moment. Moving on to review of gifts and hospitality by priority group 3 and the recommendation, and I'm going to hand over to Councillor Dimery, who chairs that group, to pick up the paper. Thank you, Martin.
Oh, that's on. Right. Thank you very much. We've we met. I can't remember the date we met, but we met, discussed the issues, much of which seemed to come forward from the controversy over the Glastonbury tickets, as you will recall. And actually, I'm going to hand over to Alan, who has very kindly done most of the documenting of what we discussed and has come up with the form that you can see in the appendices. So, thanks, Alan.
Thank you, Chair. I think I would re-emphasise the first paragraph on page 19 of your agenda pack. We are not bashing members. We are trying to help them safeguard themselves, safeguard the reputation of individual members and the council. We certainly don't want to bash them. We've looked at, I actually produced a list of all the gifts and hospitality declarations between June 22 and July 25 for our discussion. The one problem we have, of course, is that only recently we've had the have you accepted, have you declined. So out of all of those, we don't know how many were actually accepted, but the big ones that stand out are the Glastonbury tickets. Some members have been offered tickets on more than 2 occasions. And say we don't know whether they've been accepted. Therefore, we want to, we've looked at the declaration of interest form, and we are making some suggestions for some minor alterations there. One alteration which I have forgotten to pick up, if you look at page 22 of your agenda pack, item D in the middle of that page, because at the top of the declaration form we're suggesting changing rejected to refused, which is a slightly softer word. D should be I have refused the offer rather than rejected the offer.
And in E as well.
Yes, sorry. So thanks, Francis. It should be in E as well. Reason for acceptance or refusal.
Just for clarity then, Alan, so we change in D,
In D, I have
refuse,
refused the
reject
offer.
becomes refused.
In E, in the title, the reason for acceptance or refusal of the offer, and in the text, I have made my decision to accept or refuse the offer.
Thank you, Alan.
I think it's open to members to accept, reject, or amend the suggestions we're making.
Thank you, Alan. Martin, over to the floor then. Any comments along Alan's suggestions? Martin.
Just to follow that up, I think we've had this discussion at some length, I think, previously, and I would probably point members in the direction of that form and whether or not they agree with what's on the form, because that's the effective outcome of these discussions. There might be a wish to further discuss the moral principles behind accepting gifts and so on, but I think we've been down that path quite a lot. So that's if I may, so what I would suggest we might focus on.
Thank you, Martin. Any other Francis?
Agree. And the only and therefore strictly on the form itself, and this is nitpicky, Francis, it's the chairman's charity, not the chairman's charities. I think Scott will advise. I think it's the chairman's charity and he decides what he does with it. Or she.
Have you got the page, Francis?
Sorry, yes, it's F on page 22 in red.
Charity.
I think, but I stand to be corrected if I'm, Scott, you probably know.
Alan or Scott, have you got any comments about that?
I mean, there's generally a chairman's charity, but there are also occasions where the chairman does make donations to charities on specific, where there are specific focuses. So I think that's why the plural's been left in to allow for that scenario where, in addition to the chairman's charity, there is also a decision to donate something to particular charities that are a focus in a given year. But you're right, there is a single chairman's charity, but there are occasions that the chair does donate to charities as well.
The reason for me suggesting charity is that makes it quite clear that it goes through the chair, not rather than the member. That was, and I think that the separation from the member Because it's the chairman, so the chairman can decide what he does with his charity, with his charitable lump, as it were. But it's a time.
For somebody else in France. Thank you very much. So are we leaving it as charity or charities?
Mr. Chair, just suggest he donate it to donate to a charity acceptable or accepted by the chair. Something like that. I did have the words and I lost them. So that it qualifies.
Thank you, Martin. Brian?
Does it not just mean the various chairs, various charities over the years?
I'm not sure. Scott, or would you like to comment on that?
Again, an alternative form of wording has the same effect, would be just to donate it to the chair of council's chosen charity.
Everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
And is that the only comment that you'd like to add? Which case, oh, well, sorry, I think you pointed at somebody there. Thank you.
My apologies, Chair. Just I guess a reminder, and just to kind of follow the debate that was had at previous meetings, it's whether you're comfortable that the form is sufficient to describe the reasoning. So the point that you made previously was that you wanted to be really clear about what the reason was for accepting this offer. Is the guidance in that statement sufficient for you? Because that will be the statement that guides what members write when they accept an offer.
Thank you, Alan. So everybody happy with the answers? Well, I'll hand that back to Martin, the chair of that group.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps those boxes could just be tick boxes and be smaller, and then you don't have to create boxes for people to write things in for the rest of the things. All right, that's a fair point. Alan, what do you think? You designed it.
Alan.
Thank you, Chair. A question first. Is this form completed online or is it printed and then filled out by hand? Claire? So it's available online. So in which case, whoever designs the form needs to have an open text box there. And Mr. Pudding, that's fine. Yeah. The other thing, Chairman, sorry, Martin, the other thing you do need to look at, members need to look at, is the alternative wording on the top of page 21 of your agenda pack, where it's either the words in red or the words in black underneath it. It's bringing your role as a councillor into disrepute or bringing the office of member into disrepute.
Before we do that, Alan, can I just clarify where the boxes are now in terms on page 22?
So there should be a box under, you should have the ability to answer under A, B, C and E. The boxes are not there for members to complete. It's A, B, C and E.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Alan. Sorry, moving on to the point you just made.
Top of page 21 of your agenda pack, there are two options for it's either bringing your role as a councillor into disrepute or bringing the office of member into disrepute.
Council into disrepute.
Alan, yeah.
Just to clarify, it's your role as a member and the council. The LGA's advice is very clear on that.
Can I just remind everybody that, like all things, it's a process of continuous improvement. And if we try and divide the atom too far today, I think we'll probably end up in that ditch that Francis hoped to avoid. And we will come back and review these things. So the question is, are you happy now to accept form as it is and for that to be introduced as of the end of this meeting?
Sorting out the A or B in, on page 20.
The boxes?
No, page 21.
Sorry, wrong page. Yeah, yeah, okay.
Can we delegate it to officers to write the words about who's coming into top?
Are you happy for that, Alan and Martin?
Yeah.
Okay, and you're happy, Scott and Alan, to do that? Okay, delegated. And so that form will be used as a result of that from now on. And thank you to P3 for doing all the work on that and the very careful examination. It is something that will be subject to continuous improvement. And so no doubt we'll return to this ditch again at some point in the future.
Chairman, before you move off that agenda item, can I refer members to page 19 of your agenda pack, item 6. Page 19, item 6, where we are suggesting that the members' declaration of interest form, something completely different, which is sent to members, I understand, at least once a year, has an additional question added to it. Well, 2 questions. Have you received any offers of gifts and hospitality within the last 12 months? Yes or no? If yes, have you submitted the gifts and hospitality declaration form? Just a subtle hint. Oops, yes, I did receive a case of wine, and I know I haven't declared it yet. I don't drink, so I won't get off.
Thank you, Alan. I thought you'd include all those in the form already. Right,
Sorry,
okay.
this is the declaration of interest.
Yep.
Where you declare whether you've got a property, business, anything like that. That's a completely different form.
So everybody clear now that we're looking at page 19, item 6, the suggestions that are made there. And does anybody have any comments on that or clarification? Views? They're all happy to answer.
It's a jolly good thing to have reminders. I just wonder whether this form is sent out to members every year. I wonder whether it would be better in the covering email, because it sort of muddies the water between gifts and declarations of interest. And I don't know whether there are regulations and rules about how the declaration of interest should be. If there's no problem with it all being together and people don't think it will muddy the waters, then fine. I just would welcome an officer view.
To Alan.
So two points. I think we can certainly absolutely put reminders into all correspondence associated with disclosing interests and reminding members to register gifts and hospitality, and we'll continue to do that, and in fact probably drive that a little harder in the coming 12 months. I understand the point completely, and I think it's a very good suggestion. I wouldn't put the two together though on the form, because there is a risk that you may see that members say, oh, I did receive, the example, a case of wine over 28 days ago, so I'm declaring it now, at which point they've fallen foul. So there's a risk that whilst I understand the benefit of effectively a sweeper form, it effectively encourages members to go, oh, don't worry about it, I'll do that as part of the annual sweep through of what I've received this year, at which point we're inviting members to almost fall in a little bit of a trap there, that no, I'll wait until the annual declaration when the requirement is within 28 days. And certainly when it comes to interests, those interests have to be reported within that period. And if they're not, their consequences are incredibly serious for members, as you all know. And I'll do some more work on that in the coming months. But that's something that I think I understand. I completely understand the point. I would suggest not amalgamating the two, but if standards committee are minded to, what we can do is take that away and make sure we include the principle of the point in all of our communications.
Thank you, Alan. Any thoughts from Martin? Alan?
No, nothing to follow up on that.
Thank you. Thank you, Francis. So my understanding is that you'll look at the 2 points that have been raised under point 6 from P3 on page 19 and look at how best they're included going forward. Is that a fair assessment, Alan? Thank you. I would say that I think a lot of people aren't aware, and I'm just going to re-emphasize it now, of the 28 days. And that is, you have 28 days. If you're 29, the potential is the worst scenario of a criminal offence. So it's not a matter of waiting for a year. 28 days, quite difficult. So everybody needs to be aware of that. So in some ways, I think the work that Alan's going to look into to remind people of that will, and we'll come back to that in the future, will be absolutely vital, because I'm not sure whether people are aware of that time scale. Okay, thank you. So the action is for really monitoring officer to look at the form, implement it ASAP, and to look at the 6.6 on page 19 as to how that might be best introduced. Okay. Thank you. Moving on then to Code of Conduct Complaints Quarterly Update. The recommendation is to note the update report at the end of Q2 and in respect of Code of Conduct Complaints. So you've all had the papers. I'll now open to questions, clarification and comments from the floor, please.
Bit of confusion here. We have a table which is, it's Q2, so it's July, August and September. Is that right? We have a table which has July followed by May followed by June. We have another table which is April to June, the graph with April to June. And I wasn't quite sure what I was trying to understand from that lot. And that may be an AI not understanding the question. Thing that just needs to get sorted out. And more, therefore, I was slightly not slightly confused as to the lovely pretty pie chart, which has quite a lot of numbers in, which is more than any of the others tables and things add up to. I think what time period it was covering, and again that might well be an AI question that it hadn't quite got there yet, and that's part about understanding and use. But the proper question, the question about content, is we understand the provisions of the code that are cited. What I don't think I understand is the connection, if there is any, and maybe there isn't, between the kind of complaint that's made, what's cited, and whether or not it was upheld. In other words, if there are an awful lot of things that are about misuse of position and they're always upheld, then we've got something to worry about. But if in fact none of the misuse of position ones are upheld, then we can think about something else. And I looked down at the Appendix 1 to see if I got anything out of that, and there is nature of complaint, but it's what's under nature of complaint in that table is dismissed or upheld, etc. And that sort of doesn't help me. And again, I rather suspect this maybe AI hasn't quite got it right yet.
Thank you, Francis. Alan, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Very happy. I think they're really good comments in terms of providing more clarity into the report. I can assure you that it's nothing to do with AI in this instance. Absolutely not. But we.
All right, then somebody didn't do it.
So as always, and regardless of whether AI is used in something, the squishy human is responsible for the publication of the report. So ultimately, it's the squishy human that will be held account, which is me in this instance. So I think what we can do is certainly provide more clarity, certainly to the pie chart in terms of the numbers that have been received and upheld, and we can subdivide each of these categories to give you a view. Just out of interest, it's the total number that's shown in that pie chart, so it's cumulative, but we can split them as well to show you that and to show you the increase. And I accept the kind of need for a bit more clarity into the report itself, so that's absolutely fine. We can take those things forward. So we'll provide further clarity into the pie chart, both in terms of upheld, the time period this relates to as well, and also ensuring that it does map back to the appendix to make sure you can see what's new and what's coming. Happy with those clarifications?
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Francis. So, Martin,
Do we quantify repeated offenders, or is there such a thing as a repeated offender?
Alan, would you like to comment on that?
Apologies.
Where that I was.
Apologies, Councillor Dimmery. Not at all. Not at all.
Fair enough.
Not at all. Through you, Chair. Unfortunately, we do have repeated offenders. We do have a number of complaints in some instances that come in that refer to individual councillors, unfortunately, and they are repeat matters. They are also repeat matters that for both town and parish councils and for unitary councillors. Where those instances get to a particular point and there's a theme to those, as we described at the last standards meeting, they provide an opportunity for a conversation with myself and the leader and the individual to discuss about, is there something that we need to do in terms of specific training or support? But there are unfortunately repeats in some instances.
Yeah, certainly, Martin.
What's the maximum jurisdiction you have over this? Because I'm intrigued by this. I mean, I might be repeatedly offensive, but I'm not aware that I've been reported for being a repeated offender. But if there are, then and these people have received training and they continue to do it, what actions can be taken against them?
So between Scott and I will handle this one. So certainly from our perspective, in essence, if we're seeing training being deployed, so complaint is submitted, it's upheld, and training is the solution to that particular complaint, and we find that training has been held but hasn't moderated or impacted on a behaviour, which results in another complaint, but then that's something again we can take a view on, and ultimately it would come here. If need be, if we're still not satisfied that it's being addressed, we would bring this to your attention, and it would be an individual standards hearing. But Scott,
it was mainly just that final point. I mean, where there are those instances, the very next complaint is likely to be the trigger to escalate a standards hearing panel with members' involvement, with the context that that particular subject member has been the subject of several previous complaints, and despite training, similar types of breaches have occurred again. So that those are the kind of triggers we use to hold one of those standards hearings. And you'll recall we've only had one of those since 2023.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it does seem a little bit, if I may say so, a little bit toothless. If we've got somebody amongst our members who repeatedly offends, is told. Do you bring in the group leader into the conversation at any point? Because I also think there's responsibility for the party involved, if a party is involved, to deal with their members appropriately. And while no one wants to see a by-election unnecessarily, I mean, if some people aren't suited to this role, they shouldn't be here. And there ought to be quite strong actions that we can take to encourage. I know then it becomes a political issue, doesn't it? Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, that the group leaders are brought in, and so just to confirm, I think what Alan was saying about the issue could be brought to this panel, and the person would be named rather than have the respect of anonymity, which is what we have now.
Could you
On the naming element, yeah, but not the actual consideration of the investigation and the hearing itself. That's when the panel moves into private session. The only other point, and again, hopefully you'll all recall, particularly just picking up on Councillor Dinnery's point, which has been certainly reflected across many councils in England for well over 5 to 10 years. It's the reference to the toothless sanctions, which again is a common reflection from councillors, councils and monitoring officers. Again, I'm only flagging that you will all recall that this committee did a response to the government's consultation in terms of that was headed up strengthening the standards regime. Again, we are hopeful and we anticipate the government's response to that, but certainly a lot of the national responses do seem to head towards the government is being minded to go in the direction of strengthening the regime. So many of us are just waiting with bated breath to see those actual regulations come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Martin. Bent. Is it lighting up? Have we got a, do you want to try the one to your right there, Ben? Flip. Oh, yours has come on now.
Anywhere for over 6 months. So, so I just want to know how you are going to go about that, because, yeah, it was rather shocking. I can say it was not a member of the party I was in at that time. So, but I think that the question that that person had to, it was like mudslinging and head cutting thing. So I just want to know if that is what you are doing.
Thank you, Ben. I'll hand over to Alan and Scott, and then I'll summarise if there aren't any other comments.
We would handle any complaint, obviously sensitively and confidentially as well. And there wouldn't be a public conversation around that. As Scott mentioned, if the escalation was so severe that it needs to be brought to a group of members as part of a standards hearing, that clearly would be done in private as well. So the conversation that you're referring to, you experienced in a different council, Councillor Height, wouldn't occur here.
Thank you, Alan. And
Raised this with last night. Interestingly, we are not given the full picture, because in the table presented on the 14th of April, there was complaint 2425 number 55 was unresolved, and on the 17th of July, complaints 25 from 2526 1, 3, 4, 13, 13A and 14 were unresolved. We don't know the results of those complaints now, because that's not followed up. And I wonder if perhaps we can have the full spreadsheet each time, please, Chairman.
thank you, Alan. I'll hand over to Alan.
In simple terms, absolutely. That's no problem at all.
So Alan's question is really about having a full picture for the year or all outstanding.
Preferably all outstanding.
Okay, so is everybody you happy with that, Alan? All outstanding, okay. Thank you, Alan. I think that's quite crucial because that will give us an idea of where we are in terms of the numbers. So we've got some, just to sum up then, I'll just make a few points that we are dealing with all councils in Somerset. Quite a large number, many of which we have the role of being standards committee, but we don't have a lot of jurisdiction over them. So our comments are taken on board. So we have to be aware of trying to get those implemented. And that's where one of the questions that came up earlier on in the action plan from the previous meeting that we had on the 17th of July was asking about an update on results of comments that have been made and suggestions. That's the first thing I'd like to say. I think we are working under the legislation which goes back to, Scott will correct me, is it 2010? I don't remember.
2011 local is about
2011, and when there was quite a change, and I think Councillor Bank was recording a time when things were more draconian or whatever word one likes to use, not pejorative. So I think we have to work within the framework we're given, and we've also made our comments about how we'd like the framework to move forward in the consultation, as Scott has already said. The other thing I'd like to say about these this information is we have an annual review as well. So that will pick up all the situations, and we need to be mindful of that. But hopefully, as we have an ongoing situation, so we'll actually have all outstanding complaints, just to be clear about this, that have not been dealt with yet, plus the ones that are coming in. And the next one will run October, November, December. And we'll get in our meeting in January 21st from memory. 22nd, sorry. Not from memory. So everybody clear about the actions that are going to occur out of this. P3, you're happy with the actions? You have a standing remit to keep looking at these things. So we'll come back to that perhaps in January, I think. Any other comments before we move on to the next item? Thank you, P3. Final report of complaints feedback questionnaire. Well, this is a quick one because there've been no reports submitted, so we have no feedback. So basically, we keep a watching brief on that, and that's under P1. We reviewed that on our last meeting, and we won't do that until we have another meeting because there's nothing to review. So the question might be when we come back to that, and I'll pick this up from the meeting that we had, was if people aren't filling them in, is there a reason? Can we improve the return rate? I think we might know the answer to that, but its existence, it is there, but we'll need to review whether it's fulfilling its purpose. So there's no action really from that, but it'll remain in the remit of item 10, SALC, support for city and town parish councils. You all had the recommendations in the papers. And I think Scott and Ewan are going to do a double act on this. I hand over to either of you or both of you. You Scott, then Ewan.
I mean, hopefully all members will certainly understand that we've been doing a series of regular updates through to the committee, and clearly identified as part of that the importance of both the work that Somerset Council does in terms of promoting good standards of conduct and behaviour, but also that partnership work with the Somerset Association for Local Councils as well. I think for me, what this is doing is again just providing a further update in terms of that work. It also sets out, and I'll let you, certainly speak in far more greater detail than I, in terms of the offer that's currently provided, the areas, for want of a better phrase, where we've identified we could do further work, and then I think what this is then reflecting back to the committee is we have identified, and there are some important points set in that summary report, which is I don't have to use the phrase, you can, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make it drink. There is a challenge, nevertheless, in recognising that our 280 city, town and parish councils, not all of them are members of the Somerset Association of Local Councils, and therefore are not therefore necessarily directly connected to take up the offer that is available. But even those that are, there is still this element of, particularly where some of them may encounter some governance challenges, which could result in, say, relationship, behavioural differences operating within the council, which are affecting the governance of that. I think we all still have to recognise each of those councils are sovereign bodies in their own right, and our ability to intervene has to be measured in the sense that we literally can't just go marching in there telling them what they should and shouldn't do because they're sovereign. So this is again about how we work with, positively encouraging people to take up those offers. But there are occasions where some of those individuals or individual councils may not accept that offer, and we just need to be mindful that. And I think that's an important concept. The only other bit, and it sort of flows from the last paper, and it flowed from the last meeting. I think it's also about just putting into some context the level of complaints and the type of complaints that we have in Somerset compared to other parts of England, in the sense that from a stepping back, if you were to compare the types and levels of complaints, I wouldn't say we are in a high level of complaints or experiencing large numbers of very concerning behavioural standards issues, which a number of other areas are. I do think there's something about context. I know we've touched on this before, but I think again we just have to recognise that I'm not aware of any council in England that's been able to get to a position of having no complaints whatsoever, or having a complete buy-in from every single council and councillor within their area. So there is always going to be complaints, dare I say it, because we're dealing with human beings, and sometimes some of the complaints stem from behaviours and relationships that break down between individuals. I'll hand over to you, and who can speak far more about what the.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. The point Scott got to at the end, it's all about people, is roughly the summary of this. So there will be real people in real councils. So if I could just sort of talk through the paper, sections of the paper that we submitted. Section 2 is actually written, I'm fortunate because I could basically copy and paste with minor edits a letter that we recently sent to the small number of councils who've not renewed their membership of SALT this year, so it was going into some detail on the services. And I will say it's a very small number in Somerset. We've got much higher membership as a county association than many of our fellow county associations. We have over 95% of the councils in membership. We lost 12 members this year who didn't renew when we've had to increase our fees, affiliation fees, dramatically after a period of 4 or 5 years of zero increase, partly driven by challenges through COVID and subsequent staffing challenges. So we've reset the organisation. We only lost 12 members, and we're hopeful of bringing all of them back soon. So that's what the purpose of the letter is. Points within that, the National Association of Local Councils is our parent body, or it's not quite that relationship, but the membership of the Somerset Association includes membership of the National Association. You cannot be a member of the National Association without being a member of your county association. Different councils of different sizes have different needs, and we tend to find that the larger councils, like our larger towns, they do a lot of direct work with the National Association, and they have a super councils network. So that's what's particularly valuable to them, and we tend to liaise with the senior officers, but also provide a lot of support to the more junior officers, recognising we represent the council as a body. What now particularly provides is it has the legal experts of the sector and writes a lot of legal topic notes, and it gets involved directly in currently the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill, which is reviewing the standards regime nationally, and there will be some legislation to come on that. Other key point that this year they published in partnership with the Society of Local Council Clerks, which is the membership body for local council officers, an update to the practitioner's guide, which is basically the audit regime for local councils. And there's getting very technical, but he'll go into, there's a thing called Schedule 10 that I think we discussed in the last meeting, which you sign in your annual governance and accountability statement. That's had some strengthening this year regarding data protection. And so that's something that the auditors should be increasingly hot on. And we're getting a lot of inquiries from councils on that point, and have actually put together a new training package based specifically on the tightening of that. So we believe we've upgraded our services. We're getting very good feedback, of course. We have a standard training package, which I've covered in previous meetings, which includes for councillors, Councillor Essentials, which is 2 parts, the Code of Conduct and Councillor Interests, the councillor as an employer, because we do get a lot of advice and potential challenges, is often councils not understanding their duties as an employer, that they employ the clerk, and maybe members of the public not understanding what the clerk's role is. Sometimes that comes in. Making council meetings work is chairpersonship by another name, to try to attract people into it. And I actually went to that one on Tuesday evening to just sort of observe. It was well attended. Gold Star to North Petherton Town Council, who sent about 4 councillors on it, but there were quite a lot of councillors on that one. It's a really good one, and it's more of a 2-way discussion, so I'd encourage that. And of detailed stuff on the audit, and then obviously we train clerks as well. Essential clerk course and the full certificate in local council administration, which is the recognised qualification for clerks. Not all clerks in Somerset are trained. We'd like to see all of them trained. So Sam Winter, our council business support officer, does lead that training these days. I put a table in which I pulled up for our AGM this year, showing in the last financial year what's our proportion by revenue, because we charge for training on a just cost recovery basis. 40% of the training we delivered last year was code of conduct training. I actually think that's too high, as I made the point to the AGM. I would much prefer if we had a more balanced training thing, where we were doing a lot more councillor essentials, making council meetings work, the councillor's employer, because if everyone was being trained in the basics, we'd have fewer code of conduct issues because people would understand their roles. So appreciate all support from Somerset Council and from Somerset councillors to encourage the councils in their areas to get trained, basically. So moving on, we can offer some additional services. Sam Winter, our company secretary and business support officer, is a qualified mediator. There may be circumstances where mediation, if all parties are keen to engage in it, could be an appropriate solution, and we're happy to talk to councils on that particular point and come up with a bespoke offer. We did do this. We did make a proposal, so I've included this example recently, where there was an issues in basically under the theme of people not understanding their various roles and responsibilities. And what we worked up with the clerk of the council there was 3 interviews, what individual with the chair, individual with the vice chair, and individual with the team of council officers, and then bringing it back together to work out what the issues of that council were. This didn't actually proceed, because this is often the case. We spend time working with the council. What happened there was one of the councillors resigned, and they would not, as a council, accept the costing for the training package, so it didn't proceed. We'd still be very keen to do it. That happens quite a lot, so be aware of that. We can do formal governance reviews, looking at all of the policies of the council and provide a professional feedback on things that we suggest they might want to consider approving. Very happy to do that. And we've discussed previously an approach that we were recommended by the NALC Civility and Respect team on I guess the strongest intervention is a thing called an improvement board, which there are some examples of in other counties where relationships have broken down so much that it merits a joint effort between the principal authority, the county association, with support from the national bodies, to go in and have a full review with an intention of resetting the council. We did discuss that in relation to one council, again, not taken up to date, but there are positive signs of improvement there. So, yeah, and to make the point at the end, these are things that town and parish councils have to pay for. So we find most councils are very happy to pay to get their councillors and officers trained. We find they're less willing to vote to take on some sort of bespoke intervention, but there may be questions of strong encouragement that can be provided to help resolve the really difficult situations. And as previously stated, under the current regime, the formal sanctions are very limited, which may change with the new legislation.
Thank you, Ewan. Thank you, and thank you, Scott. Thank you for the work you put into produce this document. It's something we've been talking about for some time, and I think it's a very comprehensive document. It seems to be focusing on 4 offerings: training, mediation, governance review and improvement board. The final 3 are bespoke, and also a question about the funding situation. So I'm just going to open now for clarification, comments and recommendations about how we might move forward from the room and from those who are online. Room first. Scott.
So just to answer one of the more fundamental points of your point list, and I do think it's a fundamental one for the committee to be aware of. I'm certainly not aware of any specific budget that Somerset Council currently has to effectively fund any improvement board or specific intervention. I think, again, members need to be aware of that. Doesn't mean that if this committee is minded to recommend it, that might be something then which would have to be considered as part of the council's budget approval process. But I don't know if Alan wanted to add anything, or whether I've summarised that.
Chair, I think Scott's hit the nail on the head in terms of any particular support. I think all I would add to is that if it's coming to the Unitary Council, it's coming to the monitoring officer's inbox, so to speak. That should be the line of the final line, really. And we would always look to encourage and support those town councils to take and parish councils to take action themselves. Where there is a significant issue and we're concerned about either a behaviour or an issue, we would have that conversation with SALC through Ewan. So if there's a particular concern as a result of an individual complaint or complaints, we would raise those informally, so that SALC were aware of those particular issues. But at the moment, there is no budget associated with supporting town and parish councils. And of course, they are, as Scott rightly said right at the start of this, there are their own sovereign bodies, and to intervene or interfere in their operation is incredibly heavy-handed and absolutely the last resort.
Thank you, Alan. I think that's a phrase that we're getting your retaliation in first. I think that one is, in terms of clarifying the issues. I've got Francis, then I think Bent.
I was going to say what Scott said.
Mercifully brief. The Ben.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to, or just want to say, surely every town council and parish council in Somerset area has got funding to train their whatever many staff they have got in their offices, and has got everything there, because surely the council tax that, for instance, Shepton Mallet has dished out, there should be plenty enough to cover that, and not so it comes anywhere near Somerset Council and they want help, financial help to support them in that matter.
Thank you, Ben. Pass over to Scott. Did you have a comment?
Again, it does return again to that fundamental point. The determination of a parish council's annual budget and how much it allocates for any training of its staff or of its members is purely a matter for that parish council.
Thank you.
But I think you're right. You would hope that from a challenge perspective, surely with a code of conduct that every council has, that would give them an annual consideration of, are they investing enough in that?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. Alan.
And just to add to what Scott's just said, just for further clarification, if we saw, and these cases are incredibly rare, I think that's the first point to make, but if we did see a town or parish council that was in distress as a result of how it behaved or its members behaved, and we didn't see an allocation of funding as part of its annual precepting process, we would raise that as a concern. So in the same breath of there has been a sustained concern or a sustained issue and no provision has been made for that training, we would raise that as an issue. But that would be, again, we're talking about the extremes, not the generalities. And they are thankfully very, very few and far between.
Thank you, Alan. Any other questions? I'll move on to the online. Oh, Alan, sorry, I didn't see you there.
Thank you, Chair. Just a thought, bearing in mind the time of year, is it correct in putting out something to town and parish councils, either by standards committee or by SALC, to say, this is the time of year you're considering your budget, don't forget to include something for training?
That's a very good thing. Yeah.
Ewan, would you like to comment on that?
if I
think it
may
was aimed at
respond.
your budget.
Well, I will reassure that we were certainly very encouraging at the Somerset Parishes Conference a couple of weeks ago. In fact, I should have mentioned that Scott and I led a workshop on standards there and had some interesting discussions in that. So I was trying to give that message out. We're encouraging people to put decent training budgets in, and we'll have another newsletter going out start of next month, well before the January precept setting.
Does that answer your question, Al? Just on the point that you had a workshop, it may be of interest for members of the Standards Committee to know when those workshops are occurring, and if they can, perhaps to go along to them, any of the members here. So perhaps you could just include Scott or Alan in that, and will be circulated. I certainly went to one, I think it was last year, which was I've enjoyed and found very, very useful. Any questions online? No, I don't think we have. Hugh hasn't got his hand up. Nice to see you, Hugh. So let's move on to what we do with the document that's been produced. And I think we need to sort of...
He was trying to say something.
Is he? He hasn't got his hand up, has he?
Yeah.
Has he? Hugh? are you
Hello,
trying to-
can you hear me?
Yes, certainly. You're writ large at the moment.
Yeah. Well, what has happened? My screen has gone very, very small. I've got the gentleman who just spoke now on the super company that helps us behave ourselves, and just to say that Loretta Wetlaw, of course, is based in Watchet, and she's very much tied up with the scheme of things, and she's always promoting them. So that's good. So that's a great help to me, actually, knowing I've got somebody with that standard knowledge in our pack. Sorry again, Chair, for being here. I'm terribly embarrassed. I really, really am. I went and got it biscuits this morning, specially early. God bless.
Don't feel embarrassed. It's good to see you online, and well, hopefully the biscuits will last until January when we next meet you again. I suspect not if you're eating them as we speak. But nice to see you anyway. So,
Thank you, sir.
Ewan, you've still got your light on. Do you want to?
I'll take it off.
Could you
No.
repeat? Sorry, what was the question?
Your light on.
Oh,
You've got your light on your. Do you wish to speak?
I wasn't planning to. No, it's just still on.
No, I just thought I'd missed you. I often do miss people. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. I've got one point of clarification. Really, was just about the essentials for clerks. You had a list of, and it just covers councillors. Where would that come into that list of the training, starting with the code of conduct 40%, in terms of training for clerks? Because I think it's quite crucial if parishes are going to have the competence to be able to handle some of the things they have now. It's one of the criteria, I think, that they have fully trained clerks. I'm right, thinking. So where would the percentage of that particular course rather, come in that list of events there?
That analysis was just for councillor training. So the clerk training, basically, it's a bit more limited because we do clerk as the essential clerk and the full Silca. Silca's a completely different programme. So I probably should have added, actually, we've recently we'd led a bespoke training session for the Somerset Council link officers, which is part of our using the wider Somerset team to encourage better standards across councils, helping the link officers to understand how town and parish councils work was something that I'd worked up with Kate Hellard and Emma Plummer, who lead that team. They are putting 4 of their team through the Essential Clerk programme with a view to moving on to full Silca, subject to budgets being agreed, etc. Silca is a programme that we recommend a clerk has been in post for a year minimum, and then it's a year's programme, basically coursework. So they've got to demonstrate various things through the course. So it's not, you wouldn't be quite looking at it the same way as the councillor training. We do offer the code. We encourage clerks to also attend the code of conduct training. It's open to clerks and councillors actually, and there's certain nuances that, as we know, councils should not be hearing code of conduct complaints because that's for the Somerset Council monitoring officer. We do get problems if they try to hear their own code of conduct complaints, but if they've received a complaint, for example, against the clerk, that's a complaint against the council, not against the clerk as a person, and that is in their power to hear the complaint about the corporate body. So we do get those examples. So it's talking through all of those things with them as part of the training.
Okay, thank you, Ewan. So looking at the document in front of us, and thank you again for all the contribution to that. My question is, how do we take this forward in terms of recommendations? My feeling is that we need to promote to people the range of services that we have to offer. And obviously the training's been done quite widely already and is widely taken up by the comments that have been made. And it's a question about how we let people know that there are other more bespoke and individual offerings available, as albeit subject to funding. Because I'm not sure whether people are aware of those. So the question is, how do we do that? And I'll open that for comments, please. Ewan and Scott.
Again, if this is something the committee is minded to, in principle, support, then again, I think for certainly myself and you and that, I think that will give us a steer to do some further detail work, particularly looking at the experiences of some other councils around the option of things like a independent improvement board as a sort of measure to help those parish or town councils that may be struggling more than others with their governance. So again, I think there's perhaps some further work that we could do to then bring back to the committee, because I think that will also inform, as part of that, helping to scope sources of funding as well, because we're going to have to qualify, even if this committee is minded to try and put forward what would be a pressure bid to put into Somerset Council's budget, we will have to qualify what is that pressure bid actually providing, the value of that, and are there any other additional contributions. So you can see, I don't believe we're at that stage to be able to complete that, but if the committee's minded that some of these are some positive proposals, then I would suggest, I haven't had the opportunity to talk about this with you, and so you'll forgive me in part, but I'd suggest that perhaps we could do some further work for the next meeting to bring back. But Ewan, I don't know if you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, if I may, yeah, so first point, I think the endorsement of the approach from the Standards Committee would be incredibly valuable. If the committee had questions that they wanted us to explore further, that would be really helpful to know. I think also, in addition to the endorsement, the role that Somerset councillors play in encouraging good standards amongst town and parish councils would be something that we as the Standards Committee might want to encourage, because many of the councillors cover huge numbers of parishes in their division, so we attend a lot of parish council meetings. In any dispute, even before it gets to a complaint, sometimes the councillor's right, sometimes the clerk's right, sometimes the principal authority councillor's understanding of the role of the parish council isn't 100%. And I've seen cases where the same councillor, who might be well known to me, is right in one instance and not quite correct in another instance. So but there is a real positive role that Somerset councillors, and I guess the political groups of those councillors, could play in encouraging all of their members to spread the message about good practice.
Thank you, Ewan. So, Francis.
I think that the availability of training for parish councils is splendid. I think that's really good, and I think we should be very happy in all the local authorities' communications with parish councils. You could even stick it in the signature box. The reminder that is available, that it is a membership organisation. However, two things. They are sovereign bodies, unless the member of this authority who generally attends them is also a member of the parish council. They have no right to speak. They can only speak by the invitation of the chair or in the public forum. Now, I'm not a member of any of the parish councils. It would, I wouldn't do anything else if I was. There were too many of them. But I don't think that it is the role of the local authority member, the principal local authority member, not a member of a sovereign body, to set themselves up to tell them, the chairman, how to behave. That's what the clerk is for. I also think that it's entirely proper to encourage them to spend money on training. They can buy their training where they like. They may or may not be a member of SALT. They raise their funds. They can set their precept. That's their business. It is not this authority's. It's not, I think, appropriate for this authority to use its council tax for something which another body ought to be paying for. So I would absolutely not wish to see that happening. And the other thing I want to say, and this is not intended to be difficult or in any way accusatory. However, the Somerset Association of Local Councils is a membership body, is funded from its membership. It has an interest in promoting and getting promoting its work to get its income, and this committee needs to be very clear in its consideration as to what interests there are when we consider this.
Thank you, Francis. Bent.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I do not know your workload, but I am sure that you are very, very busy people. And for you to take up a lot of your time that may be spent much, much better, and most certainly that the taxpayers of Somerset has paid for, then I would rather you said, no, we cannot help the individual councils. They have got to fight their own way through it, because you are, I'm sure, busy people, and I cannot vote for something that will make you in a dilemma. So I will abstain from this here.
Thank you, Bent. Any other?
Thank you, Chairman. Would it be useful to you and to have a formal resolution of this committee? And I've come up with some words which throw out, if you like. Somerset Council's Standards Committee would encourage all town, parish and city councils to make use of training offered by SALC, especially in relation to members' code of conduct. Whilst I take on board Francis's point of there are other training facilities available, would that help Ewan's promotion of such training?
Thank you, Alan. Any other comments around the room before I try and sum up? Scott, sorry. Going for Scott? Okay. Nothing online. Okay, thank you. Well, let's come back to some of the points that's been raised. I agree that really this should be the responsibility of the sovereign body to pay for. And I think there's an element of the fact, where does the money come from otherwise? But the second point for me, and probably as important, is that unless they're committed, and that means that they have to invest in this, then I suspect the horse to water situation might apply. And it'll be things that will be done to them and not with them, or for them, or and their own volition, if you like. So I think that's quite critical. The second element which Alan's raised is, I think I would like you to consider endorsing the document that's come forward in terms of what can be offered. And I would bring us back to previous conversations where we've looked at what Somerset Council, as part of its duties, can offer in terms of a carrot as well as the stick. And the stick is I think probably best described as a limp one. But to provide the carrot and the stick, and this is what Scott and Ewan have been looking at in terms of the training and also the other support packages. And I would encourage you to endorse it, because at the moment it's what Somerset Council supports. But secondly, it actually gives councils, and we all know that they're volunteers and they're variously skilled, the ability to look at, if you like, a list of things that they can draw down on if they need to. And I think hitherto we've not had that. But the training, that's fairly easy to understand. But the more difficult ones, which are in the next three elements, the mediation, governance review and improvement board, really we've not been able to identify how we might help people. And whilst these are going to be bespoke by their very nature, and therefore the size and spec of what is offered will be different, and therefore the funding, I think it's quite crucial that we have that element as well, because it has been occurring and we just haven't really codified what we can do if it should be needed. So my first question is, can I ask you to consider endorsing, and I'll ask for a vote on this, the document that's come forward? And could we have a show of hands if people will endorse that? in principle. Okay. Again, this is going to be a document which is subject to continuous improvement. A lot of the elements are in use now. A lot of the elements are going to be one-off, and so we've got to see how this goes forward. Coming back to Francis' point of how much we're involved with the sovereign bodies and encouraging them, it is quite a challenging one because we don't have a role. We don't have the ability to speak, as she identified, apart from in public questions. And also, councillors are often having multi hats in those situations. And it's perhaps another one which is clouds the area. And I know one council I go to where I have 4 hats at least. But so I think to throw another brick in the water might be quite challenging. But I do reinforce the situation whenever I can. But it is quite challenging to intercede when you see things perhaps aren't going as well as you would like to. And I think that's a challenging position to be in. However, we all need to recognise, in principle, the value of endorsing that supporting that councils take on training, that they're equipped and they feel supported by ourselves and others. So, in principle, we've got an endorsement. The other recommendation was that we look forward to see how we can best promulgate what is available to people, I think. And Scott and you are going to come back to the next meeting to suggest that. If they feel the need to test drive, promulgation, promotion, marketing, whatever you want to call it, communication before then, is anybody have a problem with that in order to test drive some of the things they might have in mind? Scott, is that going to cause a problem before we've discussed what your plans are for test drive?
I mean, there's in part, but effectively it's almost a twin track approach. There's the existing SALC offer, which I know you and colleagues regularly communicate to parish and town councils. I think the in principle one, to clarify, effectively enables both myself and you and to do further work on putting some flesh on the bones in terms of what would that look like, what would the terms of reference of such an improvement board, how would it operate, what are the support costs associated with that. And I think those are, I think my recommendation as officer is, I think we need to qualify those and bring them back to this committee before we go too far in promoting that option, because we could find, I have talked about those examples of councils that'll say, it doesn't matter what improvement offer you got, so I'm not going to take it up because we're a sovereign body. But there are also the opposite end for those that are in the, actually, we're really interested in that and we have got some funding and we'd like to buy it. And they could catch us out in us not actually having the ability to respond to that. So that's why I'd caution in the sense that let's do that piece of work and let's bring it back to the meeting so that, you know, you are in effect eyes wide open in terms of what that means.
Thank you, Scott. I'm quite happy with that. Is everybody happy with that approach? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Scott, and thank you, Ewan, again for your work on this. I think it's valuable, as I say, as part of the armoury in terms of the carrot as opposed to the stick. Or a limb that is. Thank you. Moving on to the oh, Scott, sorry.
It was only that I thought you made a really, really good point early on as part of this item, which again we talked about the recent parish conference and the joint workshop that was held in terms of promoting good standards of conduct and in terms of improving behaviours. Again, I just wonder again, it'd probably be useful for us just to flag about perhaps there's something for myself and you and to take away in the planning of next year's conference. I know that's 12 months away. Around, is there an opportunity for perhaps one of the members of this standards committee again to be part of that presentation to bring to life the work of this committee and how you see improving standards is really important. So I just think, I know we as officers, again, clearly we help support delivery of this, but I do think there's something about an opportunity for a member or several members to bring to life a lot more, rather than us talking on your behalf.
The idea, are people in principle happy to consider that? And we can think of how that might be. I mean, I would hope that all will try and attend if they can. But I think to play a key role is another area, and I think could be quite worth looking at. So all are happy to progress that one. Sally?
Thank you, Chair. Is there a date for next year's conference? Get it in one's diary.
Really good question. I'm going to pull one out of, forgive me to go to my calendar, because I haven't booked it yet, but I would almost certainly say quite likely either Thursday the 1st or Friday the 2nd of October.
Thank you. Okay, so you can book that space in your 2026 diaries now. One of those days. And it's a whole day conference, is it, or an afternoon?
It's a whole day
Whole day.
conference and well worth the attendance, I hope.
Thank you. Thank you for that small advertising promotion there. I think he's he's eating biscuits, I think, at the moment. Hugh, do you wish to make a comment at all? No. Okay, right.
So, sorry, Chair. Yeah, I'm taking everything in that you're saying about conferences and everything, but no, I won't make a comment because we'll see what happens next year.
Okay, thank you. Just somebody in the room thought you might want to make a comment. Okay, thank you. Right. Well, let's move on to item 11, the Standards Committee Work Programme. You'll see in front of you what we've got for the next meeting, which is on the 22nd of January. The programme itself is subject to updating with the work that will come forward from the action plan. So that'll be done at the pre-meeting. But that's the generic parts and elements there. And on to April. Any other comments that people might have about the standard work programme at this point? Excuse me. The quarterly update, just to reiterate, that will be on the Code of Conduct complaints, will be October, November, December. Cover October, November, December. Well, Alan.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I draw your attention to page 44 of your agenda pack? Ongoing reports, review of officers' code of conduct. This is now 2.5 years old. We submitted a suggested set of amendments around about March 2023.
Thank
Thank you, Chair. So in response to that, we're happy to bring that forward into the forward plan. So we'll take a look at bringing that into one of the formal meetings, either January or April, and we can make sure that's kind of included as part of that. That's not an issue at all.
Alan, just could you reiterate the point you made there? So Alan over there rather than Alan here.
That's fine, Chairman, as long as it's got a date on it now.
Okay, thank you. So shall we put it for January? Is that reasonable?
Let me take that away, Chair. I don't think that'll be a problem, but we'll
Okay.
let me take it away. Whilst I have the mic, Chair, can I raise another one as well?
Sorry,
yeah, we'll pick
just
that
before we
up.
go on to that one. If Alan hasn't got that paper that P3 produced, I do have it on my screen. I can forward it to you this afternoon or tomorrow.
Thank you, Alan. Okay, so we'll get a date for that. It'll be January or the following meeting. And you'd like to raise another issue?
Just one more, Chair, if I may. You alluded to it as part of your introduction. I'd like to bring an item regarding the process associated with dealing with interests and how they are managed if an issue arises.
We'll table that for the January meeting. Okay, so we'll cover that. Thank you. Any other comments on the forward work programme? Okay, if there are no other comments, then formally close the meeting. I'll put together the action plan on the flip chart and circulate it by photo as I normally do. Thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you also for the work you've done prior to this committee, because it's ensured, I think, that everybody has got thought through documents and then can spend their time on decisions rather than clarifications or discussions or reading the documents. And I think that's ensured that we're finished well ahead of schedule. And that will allow Alan to get to his next appointment. But thank you again. The work done before has helped that, and I appreciate that very much. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Hugh.